Guys, this is finally the category made for my spooky forest background. This is the apparition I caught on camera. And this is Jess Paul. Now the reason I never mentioned this to you, well, it's because this is the first installment of
This is some spooky shit.
But the reason I never made a bigger deal about this in my everyday life is because as much as I'm obsessed with ghosts, who's ever obsessed with ghosts, is because I still really am always a skeptic first about anything. Even within my old story of my only ghost encounter, I followed a ghost into a room not even thinking it was a ghost. If you want me to tell that story on this channel, I have a voice. If you want me to use it, let me know in the comments below. Yes, somewhere in the course of this video that I am going to effectively plant somewhere that you can't skip to before you hear my story, I will be showing you what I think looks like a pretty sturdy case for an apparition or a very normal trick of the light. You guys will be able to decide. But this is a real photo. I even printed it out at Office Depot. One thing to note about this photo that is similar again to my young encounter with a possible ghost is that I was not starting this story thinking about ghosts, having anything to do with ghosts. This was not a ghost hunt. This was not captured in that kind of scenario. I was actually going to a funeral. I was at a funeral. And you may ask, Jessica, why were you taking photos at a funeral? So let's go on back all the way to 2013. I was still in Pittsburgh, PA. I'm from Pittsburgh, PA. The sandwiches are a little too tall for me, but I love my city. And as part of my wonderful experience living and working in Pittsburgh, I actually had the pleasure to work with some very important people who both own and work with the Steelers. I'll keep their names out of it just to not bother them. My boss was known for being extremely charitable, extremely pleasant. She was always kind of there pictured to be, you know, rooting on the team, just being kind of a grandma figure for everybody. She died at 94 years old, so a good long life that she was remembered fondly for by pretty much everybody. And she was loaded. She was I think a millionaire. Some of my best memories were I would bring her mail and she would basically read me every single part of it, like the front of the envelopes and what was in the envelopes, and it was just some of the best ways to spend my work day. I loved talking to her, and it was pretty much sad for my entire family who worked with her family for our entire lives. Why are you getting so upset now, Jessica, over like 7-8 years ago? But when she passed, they held her funeral at one of the most beautiful and significant cathedrals in Pittsburgh, which was St. Paul's. If you've watched certain videos in my collection, you might have picked up that I am a devout atheist, but I did grow up Catholic, and though there are many things that I criticize about the religion, the art that comes out of Catholicism really always has just enchanted me. So despite it being for a very sad reason, I was kind of excited to be going to St. Paul's. I don't even think I knew how cool of a cathedral it was until I actually got there, which might excuse why some of these pictures that I ended up taking were so low quality and blurry from my pre-smartphone cell phone. Not like I would have taken a full-size camera in there because, talk about disrespectful. But as we were initially filing into the church, something that I kind of immediately thought of was to take out my phone and start snapping pictures. And the reason was, when I graduated college, my my senior thesis was actually a comic book. You guys might know that I have a degree in art. I am a professional artist, if that is worth anything in this world. When I was about 20 years old, I wrote a screenplay called Body, and I drew the comic book for my final project of school. And all of the action and climactic events take place in a very traditional and grand cathedral. When you're drawing something very specific, you want to try to get as many varying angles from the center of a sphere as possible to get as accurate as possible, at least with me. If I wanted to do something that looked really good, I needed a reference photo. My old computer is filled with me standing in a room just making various poses in front of my moving camera. So I just started surreptitiously snapping away all different angles and pieces of the cathedral, the ceiling, the sides, the confessionals, the pews, just so that I could have a new wealth of possible references that I could use when I eventually, I don't know, drew the whole graphic novel. That's never going to happen. It was so hard to just draw the 12 pages that I turned in for my final, to think about how much time that took. So I snapped this series of photos, I put the phone back in my pocket, I attended the funeral, we said goodbye to my beloved boss, and everything was Gucci. Until a couple of days later. I finally remembered to look at these photos. Like I said, I had a really primitive, if we want to call it that, phone. This was definitely before. This was about a couple years before I actually caved and got myself a smartphone, the device that I'm addicted to as much as anybody else is in this country. So imagine a phone slightly above the Nokia. I had some kind of slider phone. And I was looking through these pictures and I most likely was deleting a lot of the completely blurry and in low-res pictures that I could not even discern. But one did catch my eye. And it was a photo of a light anomaly, as we'd call it. I'm going to show you the picture right now. And you can tell me down in the comments if you think that this is rightfully an apparition. So as you see, we have this lovely angle from the vestibule of the cathedral. It's basically the area that's still interior of the cathedral, but it's not in the main room yet. And we're crossing a threshold, and right where I think a normal person would be standing is this blown out, almost completely white light anomaly in the shape of a walking figure. I've zoomed in and it looks like there is actually a person possibly standing in the pews in the distance behind this apparition, but I don't know if it actually has anything to do with the reflection, possible reflection this is casting. There are a lot of light blowouts in this very terrible low resolution picture, but I didn't have any other quite in this shape. And for it to be in the center of just a walking path, the lens flare usually does have a pretty specific shape. It almost looks like the solar system of planets lined up because the lens is reflecting back its roundness from the center of the light. You know, I almost thought even that it's like the reflection on my mom's hair, but I have other pictures of the back of my mom's really blonde hair, and none of them were even close to blowing out to that degree. And since this is the first episode of Spooky Shit, I thought that I'd go into a little bit of detail about what I think of ghosts. Like, do I actually believe they exist? I already told you I was a skeptic, and also that I'm obsessed with ghosts, so how do those two things play together? I've always been interested in the paranormal, especially post-death human entities that might be walking this same earth as we do. There are a lot of theories on what ghosts actually are or how they interact with us. If you've watched any of the ghost hunting television shows, you will have a pretty good idea of what those theories are. But as part of my particular brand of atheism, I say that I don't believe in anything, and that's true. And what I mean by that is that there are lots of theories about how this whole world of humanity came about. There are so many different religions and also alternative ways of thinking about a heavenly body, an other, a creator. And in my mind, something that I've found over the years, and, you know, if there are any religious people out there, I really just say this to document my own beliefs and to share my own point of view, not to disrespect or invalidate anything that anyone else believes. But as time has gone on and I've conversated with myself about what I actually believe is truly out there, I came to the conclusion that I will never know. I also know that no one else will ever know. And to me, that mystery is almost null and void. I don't really fixate on validating or invalidating any kind of religion. It's something that I mostly ignore because I feel like it's a waste of time to even conjecture what's actually out there. In the past couple years, I've learned to live for the very finite time that we have on the planet, and to do good for the sake of making the current world a better place, and not to kind of, you know, get a ticket into heaven. I don't care about that, because honestly, if we all go into a big sleep after we're done, that's perfectly okay with me. When I think about the various afterlife theories of the many religions of the world, probably the most appealing to me, besides, you know, lights out, you're done, is reincarnation. I love the idea that we could possibly come back and do it again, and the idea that we learn through many lifetimes. There are like too many lessons that we need to learn. I don't think a lifetime is enough. And when I think about the reasons that so many people subscribe to certain religions, maybe, you know, you grew up with this as part of your family and your community, or it gives you a sense of law, of rules, of reasons why you do certain things. But in my opinion, the reason that so many people hang on to religion is because it is a comfort. To believe that you are not completely in control, to believe that something out there can lend an invisible hand, can help you through things, that if you pray to any god or thing, that things might ease up for you. I used to be very angry when I kind of started to see the injustices of religious institutions and the just the lying and the abuse. I remember sitting in church, it's still in my wallet to this day. I had a piece of paper where I would write emo poetry about why this wasn't making sense to me anymore. I was literally listening to the pastor at the pulpit and responding in a very silent way, because there's not really much room to speak up in such a traditional religion, even though over the past couple no, they haven't gotten better. We literally just found out about the church abuse around this time of the photo was taken. So, but when I think about what comforts me, I don't like the idea of serving some kind of angry, you know, read the Old Testament, and vengeful and arrogant God. I'd much rather think about the people that I love and have interacted with in my life passing on and then still being out there somewhere. So the idea of ghosts was something that I was always very drawn to think that, you know, I might not lose these people forever and they're still kind of out there floating around or watching me when I feel that I can't do it alone. My BFF Val, she sent me this Galentine's Day card around Valentine's Day, and it's actually because of a discussion that we had. Whenever I visualize what I feel about the paranormal, ghosts, the afterlife, I picture this prop poster from the X-Files that depicts a very, very obvious fake UFO, or is it, that says, "I want to believe." Because that's kind of how I feel. Like, I think that when it comes to ghosts, I'm the closest I can be to actually believing in anything. At the same time, that very integral part of my personality that tells me you'll never know, and it doesn't matter that you'll never know, is still kind of at the basis of my non-belief system. But it is a comfort to me to think that if it's a possibility that my grandparents, my friends that died, you know, a little bit before their time, they're around. And they're rooting for me. And they're trying to send me messages. I think that's one of the coolest things to believe, if anything. I want to believe. I want to bereave. And now it's time to spin that wheel. If you're new here, hello. And if you're wondering what this is, it's a wheel of things that I love to talk about. We do something different every week. If you just sub for the spooky shit, you've got a little while to wait. But hey, Wrecked Radio! Wrecked Radio being another fan favorite. If you don't know what it is, well, tune in next week. That's what the subscribe button is for, after all. If you liked it, blue thumb it. If you didn't like it, down thumb it, because that's how this works. And something that I totally forgot that we do on this channel since I came back after the holiday break, but is completely appropriate for this category, is our social seance, which is when I go into the comments of any of my social media, including previous YouTube videos, and talk about what you're talking about to me in video real time, which is previous. Let's go to my directly previous edited video. What is this video? Makeup look pretending not to try for a Zoom call, which you can watch somewhere around this video. When I asked you what your favorite part of your appearance was, Interactus says his smile. Peter Presents says his eyes. If I say my nose, we have a full face of really cute looking features. Sayanta Das says, I don't know why YouTube don't recommend me your videos, though I am already subscribed to your channel. But thanks for Facebook for showing me this video. We are told that the bell helps. It could be annoying though, so you don't need to if you don't want to. But if there's any social media that you really pay attention to more than the other, I most likely am on all of them. Your video is very like ASMR type. I felt calm and peace. I am so glad to guys bring you some unintentional ASMR while I do my makeup. Alejandro says, your cat eye looks on point, not Susie Sue type, but subtle, classy. You don't know how much I appreciate that because I work very hard on my cat eye. Rafa92 says, I don't really have a favorite thing about my appearance. It's not something I care about that much. You know, it's funny when I read that, I realized that it's so interesting, our various experiences, that I literally cannot remember a time where I don't completely fixate on my appearance, like even when I was young. So that was really interesting to read because, of course, like, there are so many people, probably for the better, they think about maybe some of the qualities that make them the person that they are, the way that they think, the way that they act towards each other. And honestly, that sounds like a much better way to live. But for all of us that fixate on our appearances, as well as, you know, how we're treating people and getting along in this world, tell me your ways. I need to learn. I've started a lot of series like Selfism, giving advice to people who watch my videos, but in all honesty, throughout this entire This Is Jess Paul series, you guys have taught me so much about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a community member, and I appreciate literally everything you do for me and this channel, because This Is Jess Paul means everything to me, and I'm so glad you're here. But what I really want from you guys is that when we are going to continue this spooky shit category, I'm eventually going to want to narrate some spooky stories. If you happen to have a paranormal interaction, or even a non-paranormal interaction that involves just being scared, maybe being lost in the woods, having an interaction with a living human that was less than savory, that might scare some people, send it to contact@jesspaul.net and I will possibly be reading your story. If you cannot wait for those spooky stories to start rolling in, you can now listen to I Run a Haunted Diner off of Route 66, one of my favorite stories I think I've ever written and one of my narrations I've ever done. Or you can go watch my top 5 Halloween rock soundtracks, which will also clue you into what next week's category of Rec Radio is. And this is my outro.